The Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is your host, Joel Mark Harris. We are on episode number 26 today, and we interview best-selling Amazon author Julie Broad. Her book, More Than Cash Flow, tells about the ins and outs of the reality behind investing in real estate. She has won the Beverly Hills Book Award. She was also awarded the Top 20 Under 40 Awards, so quite some achievements there. She went from real estate investing to a new company called Book Launchers that helps authors market, publish, and launch their new book. And unfortunately, with this episode, we had some internet issues, so it's only audio, but hopefully you will enjoy it and gain some great insight into how to launch your own book. Hello, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Very welcome. So I want to start off with your book, More Than Cash Flow. What prompted you to write that book, and was it something that you had planned for a long time and it just sort of sprung into action, or what was the exact process of that?
How long do we have? No. So, yeah, I mean, I'd always wanted to write a book. And then as I got into real estate investing, I started in 2001, but it was kind of a journey, and a lot of things happened where, I felt like following a lot of the training out there, we ended up buying properties that just caused us massive grief. We ended up with a property that actually became a crack house, and it was a known crack house, and we ended up getting charged with fire code violations, and then we never actually got the notice, so we ended up having to go to court over these fire code violations, and there was just all these things that happened to us. And meanwhile, in the 2000s, there was all these people talking about get rich in real estate, woohoo, and and I was kind of looking around going, yeah, there's money to be made, but there's a lot of mistakes that you can make doing the things you guys are teaching. And so I really thought that a real estate book about, these mistakes and how following the lessons they're teaching you without really thinking certain things through can create a lot of problems. And I was living proof. And so I really thought that was a book that could be written. In 2008, which is epically bad timing, so if I tell you to time something, do the opposite of what I tell you. But in 2008, I quit my job and I went full-time into real estate investing and started building a platform, so a newsletter list and a YouTube channel and all those kind of things around real estate. And little bit by bit, I actually ended up in contact with a couple of different publishers that were interested in having me write a book. And so I had pitched this book idea. I had, kind of the real side of real estate investing, not the, woohoo, make money side. And they kind of said, no, there's enough real estate books that are general like that out there. So, we don't want that. But Wiley actually turned around and said, we're interested in working with you. Here's an idea that we've been looking for an author to write about. And I actually didn't even really like the idea, but I thought, hey, a book deal. And so I went back and forth with him for 3 months on this proposal, really assuming that this was a book deal because they had more or less approached me, and then they had turned around and given me a book idea. So I thought I was getting a book deal. But I ended up getting an email from them that said, the marketing department doesn't think you have a strong enough platform to sell books. And so they not only had rejected my book idea, but now they were completely rejecting me. So any shred of ego I had left was shattered. And it took me a little while, like a little bit over a year, to kind of recover. But a lot of things happened that made me see there really was a need for a book that told you, hey, you can make money in real estate, but watch out for this, think about this, be careful of this. And I just thought, I'm just going to write this book because I think there's somebody, even if there's only one, there's somebody out there that can avoid a lot of pain if they get this book. And so that was really the impetus for it, was I wanted to help other people like me who wanted to get into real estate. They were taking these kind of get rich quick courses, which really were all that were available if you wanted to learn how to invest in real estate at the time. And, I was really just giving them another perspective on it. And yeah, and it did extraordinarily well. So Wiley was wrong. I did have a strong enough platform to sell books because I took it to #1 overall on Amazon. Ahead of Dan Brown, ahead of Game of Thrones. Pretty sure they've never taken a real estate book to #1 on Amazon. So, and this was a nonfiction, niche book by a self-published author, outselling all these books. So that ended. It had a happy ending.
Yeah, I saw the screenshot. So congratulations. I was very impressed. I was like, whoa, wow, that's amazing. So have you always wanted to write a book and this was just an opportunity, or was it something that just kind of, it was a spark that came to you one day?
Both. I mean, I was a writer as a child. I had short stories published at the age of 7, and I think 7 and 8. I had tons of short stories published. So I always thought I would be a writer. And then somewhere along the line, people told me writers don't make money. So I went to business school, and kind of lost all thought of being an author until I started to see friends getting book deals, and then all of this happened, and then it really came back to me that I want to write books and I want to be a part of that space. So yeah.
And so it changed your life. And can you tell us a little bit how that happened and then how that launched into your new business?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, Ellen I didn't get to dance with Ellen. Oprah didn't call. It was,
She'll call, don't worry.
yeah, it was pretty cool to go to #1, but
Yeah.
I did think, it's one of those things where I guess in your head it's a bigger deal than maybe it really is. I don't know. But all that said, it changed my life in a variety of ways. First and foremost, it was an enormous business booster for us. My husband and I had 2 businesses at the time. One was a training and education company, so helping people invest in real estate with less risk and still same financial rewards, but more sensible. And we also had an investment company where we were buying a house pretty much every month, and turning it into a rental property and keeping it in our portfolio. So we needed to raise a lot of capital, and we also, we're always looking for new people to be in our training programs. The book, easily is responsible for doubling our business, and we had multiple investors come to us from reading our book, and like out of nowhere, just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, listen, I've got $500,000. I need to invest somewhere. I liked your book. Can we talk?" And one of the people, still an investor with us to this day. And we're not really we don't actively invest anymore, but we still hold properties. So yeah, so that really was the first change. Financially, things got stronger, things were easier on the business side. But ultimately, for me, it really opened up the door to me seeing self-publishing as a real viable option for growing business, getting important messages out there, and just really impacting not only myself but other readers and other people, because my book really had an impact on people, and that feels pretty incredible to help people when they read your book. And through all of that, I saw the gaps in the industry. And I had friends that did get the publishing deals that I didn't get, coming to me going, "Hey, I'm not getting this kind of a support. My book isn't doing well. What do I need to do differently?" And so I saw on the traditional side the challenges that they had on marketing a book, and then other people self-publishing who were putting books out that really weren't good books. And it was no wonder they were struggling to get results. And I just started to see a real need for people to have support writing a great book, but writing a great book that will be marketed at the end and bringing it all under one roof, which is what we do at Book Launchers. So we really take that idea of how you're going to sell your book, who you're going to sell it to, what's it going to do, and we help you right from the beginning make sure that that book is going to be marketable to that audience and have an impact on them, but also on you in your life and in your business.
And then during this time, correct me if I am wrong, but you moved to LA. Can you tell us, and I believe it was so your husband could pursue acting.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that experience and a little bit about that journey?
Immigration is not for the faint of heart, I can tell you that. It is, yeah. So I'm one of those people who goes all in, obviously, oh, Wiley won't publish my book. Okay, I'm going to do it better than you. So that's, just a taste of my personality. So as my husband got more and more into acting and started to leave real estate, I didn't want to do the real estate without him. We were very much a team. I was very strong on the marketing and communication side, and he was very strong on the numbers, and real estate needs both. And so I didn't want to do it without him, didn't want to find somebody to replace him. So I was really looking around to see what else I could do. And I wrote another book in the meantime, but I wasn't feeling it. You know how I had a lot of things to say. I knew I could add value, but it just wasn't sparking anything in me. And his acting was starting to go well, but starting a new career in your 40s is tough, and not being in the epicenter of where decisions are made is even tougher. So I kind of just said, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go to LA to give this like a full shot, so we can just say, hey, we tried. No matter what happens, we can say we went all in and tried hard. And so we went down the crazy journey of going there. And to move, we got what's called an E2 investor visa. And I won't get super technical, but the short version of that is you could either buy a business or you can create one. But no matter what you do, you need to create employment from the start. Like the only reason they want you to come into the country with this visa is to give jobs to Americans. And so I tried looking at businesses to buy. I spent many weeks in Los Angeles, and I didn't want to buy anybody else's business that bored me. Other people's problems weren't that interesting. I'd rather create my own. So I kept going back to this idea, of helping people write and publish books, and knowing the gaps that I had seen already. And I'd already been helping a lot of authors, just for fun, just friends. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna create my dream company, because I have to invest money in this anyways. I have to kind of build the company backwards. So I dreamed up Book Launchers and applied for a visa, and had some border agent evaluate my business plan and eventually give me the stamp of approval to move to the States and launch the company.
Nice. And so you mentioned your newest book, Brand New You. Can you tell us a little bit about what that's about and who the audience for that is?
Yeah, so first of all, a lesson in titling a book is right there. This is how never to title a book. The title is actually The New Brand You, but nobody ever gets it right. And I've done, I think, 75 podcast interviews, and I would say 80% of the interviewers say it wrong, just like you did. And this is an illustration of my problem, not any of the interviewers. So when you're titling a book, you want to make sure people remember it and can say it, and you don't try to get too cute or too fancy. Because this has been, and it's incredible. If I wanted to stick with this, I would relaunch the book and give it a new title. So it's something we work really hard with all of our clients on book titling. And it's almost never the title that you think, like, that makes you fall in love with your book idea. That's almost never the title that you should publish with, just so you know. Anyways, so that book was really how we raised money for real estate. Ultimately, that's what it was. But because I was putting it out at a time when we were really moving away from the intense real estate businesses that we had been running, I tried to wrap it in a more general thing. And ultimately, this book is really an example of how not to write a book to make it marketable. It is, I think, a better book than More Than Cash Flow, but it doesn't have a clear audience. If I had said, this is how you raise money for your real estate deals, it would have sold. But I tried to use it to move away without actually declaring who it's for. So instead, it's a really great book on how you can position yourself to have money or clients come to you, and how you can do it in a way, if you're a high introvert like me, or you're really uncomfortable, going for the ask, this is how you get people to come to you. And so it's tremendously valuable. And again, I actually think it's a better book than More Than Cash Flow. However, it's not well positioned. And as a result, it did not do well. And then I moved to Book Launchers and haven't focused on it.
So do you talk about branding in this book, or is it purely about more of, like, I guess, a marketing and sales strategy?
Well, see, that's the thing is it's really your brand that brings people to you. And that's what I was talking about, like how we ended up raising millions and millions of dollars for our investment business and filling our classes was through our brand because people trusted us. And it ultimately comes back to you as a person. And when I launched Book Launchers, my first 10 clients were people who knew me as a brand from the real estate space. And they just said, you know what? We've seen what you do. We trust you. You say you're going to publish books, we're going to come work with you. And so that's what the book is about, is creating that brand of trust so that whatever you say you're doing, people believe you, they trust you, and they want to work with you.
So can you give us some tips about how you can create that trust?
Yeah, absolutely. A couple things is, it's really simple stuff. Do what you say you're going to do. Always, 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 always. And it's it seems simple, and yet a lot of people don't do this, right? They don't show up when they say they're going to. They don't send that email when they say they're going to, and that can erode trust really, really fast. But if you consistently are that person who does what you say you're going to do, that can go a long way over time. From a more business perspective, I think, building a brand around things like that, so being consistent. So just as to give a really practical example, on YouTube, when I launched booklaunchers.tv, which is the YouTube channel for book launchers, when I first launched it, I was publishing videos kind of whenever my editor would give them to me. That wasn't really growing the channel. Then I started looking at what other YouTubers were doing, and they were publishing on a schedule. So I started publishing every Friday. And that started to work, but I wasn't getting a lot of engagement or even real true momentum. It was growing, but it was really slow. So I started publishing every Tuesday and Friday and never missed it unless I told people in advance that, hey, I'm taking a 4-week break or whatever that was. And that consistency, because you're showing up, you tell them, I'm going to be here every Tuesday and Friday, and then every Tuesday and Friday you show up. It seems simple, but these things are powerful brand builders because they know they can trust me to show up every Tuesday and Friday. So those are just a couple of tips.
I love them. I think the last one is super powerful because I totally believe that consistency, doing small steps over time is exactly what builds your business, what builds your brand. But it's also super hard because you don't see the results a lot of the time right away. So it can be really difficult to keep the faith, if you will, and to, keep imagining a future where, these things actually matter and that you do get that audience. So I think that, I don't know if you want to comment about that, but I think, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you've nailed it. It's hard. It's hard to put out content on a regular basis and feel like nobody's listening. And in the beginning, they really aren't. But that's good news, especially when it comes to video, because you probably aren't doing a good job at the beginning. So it's good nobody's watching at first. Over time, you'll get better. But I think the thing is to be consistent, but to also pay attention. So what did you get a little bit of engagement on? What did work to get a little bit of traction, or what videos or what content did you put out that actually got a couple comments that day? And doing more of that, still doing it consistently, like again, sticking to that schedule, sticking to that consistent message. That's the other thing too, is to not change tones on people all the time, like do an about face. Like one day you're talking about this and then the next day you're totally, slamming something. You want to have a consistent tone so people, know they can rely on you to kind of step up in a certain way. But yeah, just listening to people. And in the beginning, it's just tiny things that you'll see, but maybe one video will give you 200 views versus the other one that was 90. Okay, what did I do different between these two videos? What did I talk about? What did I do? Okay, maybe I can do a little bit more of that next time and see what happens. And it does feel slow at first, but it is about consistency. And I think most YouTube channels usually take at least 2 years before anything is happening, and then they, some of them can just grow at a crazy pace. And the same thing with your blog or a newsletter. It takes showing up consistently for a few years. It is not months, it's not days. It's years.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I want to switch a little bit and talk about, go back to book writing. Who should be writing a book? Should, is is there a book in everybody, or should you only write a book if you have a specific message in mind?
Yeah, it's funny because I hear a lot of people saying, everybody has a book in them. And maybe that's true, because, the more people I meet, the more phenomenal stories there are. Almost every person has a phenomenal story. However, I do think that some people are not going to share enough of themselves, enough of they're not going to get vulnerable enough to actually create a book that would matter. And then the other side of this is some people have a really incredible story, but they haven't done anything to actually turn it into something that makes a book. And what I mean by that is your story has tremendous value to somebody, but if you don't think about who that person is and what they're going to take away from it and really wrap it into a format and a way, a message that actually has impact, it's really not going to work. And so you still could write a book. You could write a book for a legacy purpose, but if you want to write a book for, to sell the book and to market yourself, to build your brand, you really have to remember that the book might be about you, but it's not for you. And until you're really ready to share the things you have to share in order to impact the person that you need to impact in order to sell the book and build your message, build your movement, whatever it is, you're not ready to write a book until you're ready to share deeply enough to actually have an impact. So it's kind of a long-winded answer to say probably everybody has a book in them, but I don't think everybody should write a book until they're ready.
I think that's a great answer. Do you primarily help people who are self-published? Would you recommend people go the more traditional route of publishing, in the five big companies in New York, or is self-publishing the wave of the future?
Well, I mean, the first way I can answer that is to tell you that, I think one of the greatest things that happened to me is not getting a publishing deal. And that's from a whole bunch of perspectives. So that's from the fact that I did the math. This is a couple years old now, but I did the math on it. And had I gotten that book deal and sold the same number of copies, I think I would have made under $10,000. Well, I know I would have made under $10,000 for that. Again, this was a few years ago. But I made over $100,000 from book sales, and that's just through the online, like not through online, but through Amazon and Ingram Spark, those kind of platforms. That doesn't include the speaking engagements that I did where I sold books at the back of the room. And, well, don't tell CRA, but there was cash involved. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Don't worry.
And so there was a tremendous amount of money made that I wouldn't have made had I gotten that book deal. But beyond that, I have friends who got book deals, who got TV opportunities, had to buy their book back from Wiley in order to pursue the TV opportunity. And then I had another friend who had his book reprinted word for word under somebody else's name because he had stopped promoting it. And the part that really bothered him was he had two co-authors on the book, and they were still in the real estate space where he wasn't. And Wiley republished it and gave no credit to his co-authors either. And so he was really sick by this, and it's not wrong because they get all rights and royalties. And when it comes to nonfiction, I think that's something you really have to pay close attention to and ask yourself if you're okay giving your intellectual property to someone else. Like, you have to really let that sit in, because this is your intellectual property, and I love control. I want to control my intellectual property. Forget about the fact that I'm going to make 6 to 8 times more per book sold. I want to have the rights to do whatever I want with it, now and in the future. That said, if it's really important to you, really, really, really important to you, and it's possible to become a New York Times bestseller, then you pretty much have to go with one of the big five. So if you are a really high paid consultant, or you're already making 5 figures for speaking, and you want that New York Times bestseller tag beside your name to add more credibility and clout, you have to go with one of the big 5, because traditionally, or self-published authors, it's a curated list. And if you're not with one of the big 5, they curate you out of there, even if you do outsell a bestseller.
Can we talk about marketing a little bit? And somebody who wants to write a book, when should they start thinking about marketing, and what activities should they pursue in order to increase their audience and sell more books?
So first of all, how we approach this is the minute you say you want to write a book, we start talking to you about who you're going to market it to. So you haven't even written a word yet, and that's what we're talking about is who's your audience for this book and how are you going to reach them? And it's really important that you don't start writing that book until you can actually picture where they're hanging out, where you're going to be able to connect with them. So, and I mention this because so many people sit down and write a book thinking it's going to help people, people like me, for example. And that's what they say, like in their head. I'm not saying people like Julie, I'm saying the author's thinking people like me. And so that's not clear enough. And then the other one I get all the time is, oh, well, this book is for women between the ages of 30 and 50. It's just like, no, like, where are they hanging out? You're not Coca-Cola. You don't have the budget to splash ads everywhere. Let's figure out where they're hanging out and who they are. So it's really, and a perfect example, I just had a conversation with somebody who was talking about my book is for anybody with a paycheck. And I said, well, I get a paycheck from my company. Is your book for me? And he said, well, no, you're an owner. I said, okay, so it's not for anybody with a paycheck. And then I said, is it for the 18-year-old kid that works at McDonald's? And he said, well, not unless they want to work for McDonald's and climb their career ladder. I'm like, okay, so now it's for somebody climbing the ladder in a big company. So you start to narrow down and figure out who it is. And then you can start to see where they're hanging out. They're graduating from college. They're you got to be able to say the associations they belong to, the podcasts they listen to, the magazines they listen or read. When you get that, then you can start writing. And that's so important because once you have that, you already know how you're going to be marketing the book at the end, which also answers the question of what should you be doing? Everybody should be building a platform of some kind, but if you don't have one, your book is going to help you build one if you know where the people are hanging out and you're going to be able to find them.
Yeah, I get that all the time as well. Women between the ages of 30 and 55, and so it's definitely very hard to narrow that down, and people think that that the book is so good that it will just naturally get picked up somewhere, and so I have to I'm sure you do too, bring them down to earth a little bit and say, well, no, not exactly. It doesn't really work exactly like that.
Or at all, really.
Or at all, yes.
I mean, we have incredible stories all the time. I mean, one of our books that it did well, and it's certainly, we got the author on Inside Edition, Good Morning America 2020, the cover of the Los Angeles Times. So it was a really powerful story. You would think it would be a traditionally published book, but it wasn't. And one of the main reasons he didn't even want to look into it was that he wanted to make sure his story and his message was spoken, because it was called Killers Keep Secrets, and he was the brother-in-law of very famous serial killer, the Golden State Killer. But he wanted to make sure his voice and what he wanted to say, his message didn't get changed, which, when he sold it to a publisher would happen. But the other thing was he had no platform whatsoever and didn't want to build one, didn't want to have one. The limited media that we did do with him was kind of it. He doesn't want to have a big profile. He just really wanted to get it off his chest more than anything. But that's really something to really think about when you pursue this, is you might have one of the most incredible stories, and it might even be media worthy, but that doesn't mean it's going to make the numbers work for a traditional publisher.
Can you talk a little bit about social media and how you specifically think about that for your authors?
Ooh, this is a fun one. So you must have done your research. You're like picking all the things I have very strong opinions on. So social media is one of those things people get really hung up on it. They're like, I have 10,000 followers. I'm like, great, you're going to sell 10 books. So I don't put a lot of time and effort and energy into it. We have had some clients who have really engaged following on Instagram, and that has sold books. But the thing is, if you don't have a social media following right now and you're going to publish a book, don't waste your time building a following on social media. Because again, just like I was talking about with YouTube, it takes years to build an engaged following on social media. You're much better off to dedicate your time to reaching out and building relationships with people who have a relationship with your ideal reader. because those people, they have platforms, right? So whether it's a podcast or whether they have events where they have your ideal reader in their room, there's lots of webinars and Zoom things and Facebook Lives and places that people are always looking for content. You're much better off to build put your time into building that relationship with those people that have an audience than you are to crafting social media posts and trying to collect one follower at a time, only to find out that like 0.1% of those followers are actually going to buy your book.
And so how do you reach out to those influencers?
It depends on who they are and what they do. There's not a formula for this. I wish there was. But I can give you one kind of concrete approach. So if they are active, say on social media, Pat Flynn is a great example right now. He has gone since the pandemic started, he's gone live on YouTube every single day. I don't know how you do this, but 7:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, he's going live every single day on YouTube. So if you wanted to get in front of him, you could just show up for his live every day and comment and participate and add value. Guaranteed, and I don't tune in even remotely on a regular basis, but I have seen him as the pandemic has gone on, I've seen him recognizing people who have been there every day. So now if you've been there 30 days in a row commenting on his posts and you drop him an email and remind him, hey, I've been on there 30 days, way to go, like I really loved your episode on X, and then you say, I have a book coming out in 2 weeks, or in 3 months, and I'd love for you to endorse it, is this something you do? There's a very good chance he's going to say no. By the way, like, you got to prep yourself for this, that there's people are going to say no. But if you're doing this consistently, they're going to know who you are, and they may say no to your ask, but they probably will offer some other opportunity or some other option. But you have to add value first. Always add value first. And if you go straight for the ask, you better get right to the point and be as nice as possible. Because, the number of people who write me and just say, hey, will you review my book? Or please read my book and write a review. I like every day. No relationship, no whatsoever, but somebody who I call my YouTube bestie who comments on videos every Tuesday and Friday, I have a really hard time saying no. It's really hard because I know they're there for me, so I feel like I should be there for them.
I love Pat Flynn, by the way. He's somebody I definitely look up to, and I didn't know that he was doing these live events, so I'll definitely check it out. So thanks for that tip.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Is there a book that you particularly like to gift, or a favorite book that you like to reread?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so you're talking to a complete book nerd, so it's really hard to pick one book.
Of course.
For rereading, I have to say, I have two favorites. The War of Art from Stephen Pressfield. I quote it all the time, and I reread it probably yearly. And then also Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. I haven't reread it in a while, but from a sales and a mindset and a branding perspective, it's really easy to position yourself in a weaker position. I think a lot of people do this, especially when you feel uncomfortable going for the ask. And he talks about prizing and some other things, and they're just really, really great concepts, not to make you aggressive, but just to really know your value and come into things with value. And so, yeah, I like that book. I've read it quite a few times. I've often gifted it. For books I gift, it really depends on the person, because I do have a deep, deep experience, not just in reading thousands of books myself, but also in publishing hundreds of books. I have a book for every person. So I usually gift whatever is appropriate for them in their life.
Well, thank you, Julie, for being on the show. Really appreciate your time. For people who want to reach out to you, where is the best place to find you?
If you want to reach me and not some of my team, the best place is on YouTube. I do everything on YouTube, so I am the one that responds to all comments. So if you want to connect directly with me, booklaunchers.tv. If you want to learn more about what we do at Book Launchers and connect with us as a company, booklaunchers.com, or Book Launchers on any of the social media. We're hanging out there, and somebody will answer you. It just probably won't be me.
Well, thank you, Julie, for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.